Then comes Community Development Program. After Panchayati Raj, we have CDP. The CDP program was inaugurated on 2nd October. What is there on 2nd October? Gandhiji's birthday. 1952. The Planning Commission described the Community Development Program as the method through which 5-year plans seek to initiate a process of transformation of the social and economic life in the villages. So you know about these 5-year plans which are undertaken by the Government of India. So they take 5-year plans every 5 years, and they focus on the areas of concern of Indian states. So village and the rural development is a major issue with the Indian government, because as we had said that India lives in villages, so rural development becomes a very, very important area for the development. So these 5-year plans aimed at rural development this time, and which initiated a process of transformation of social and economic life in the villages. So how their economic life will be changed? By providing more employment in the village, by looking after their financial needs, which was not the case few years back, due to which many farmers had committed suicide. It is a program of aided self-help to be planned and implemented by the villagers themselves, the government offering only technical guidance and financial assistance. So it's a beautiful amalgamation or a mixture of self-help with the support of government agencies. So government agencies will only give technical guidance and financial assistance, but who will help themselves? Self-help groups. Who are these self-help groups? From the government itself, from the village itself. So the village people themselves will form their own self-help group. We had discussed this in chapter 2 or chapter 3 also, where SHGs, that is self-help groups, was discussed in a great detail, where it was told that these are small groups which come together to finance each other, and they create a little sum of money which can be given to farmers or to the people of the village at their time of need, and these people can return the money at their own convenience. So you must be remembering Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh, who was accorded a Nobel Prize for introducing this kind of a system. So this is a major rural development or community development program in India. Self-help groups. What are the objectives of these CDPs? To solve the problem of unemployment in the village, to provide safe drinking water, to develop mass communication system in the village, to improve the centers of primary education, public health and recreation in the village, to improve the conditions of the houses, to encourage cottage industries and indigenous handicraft. What is indigenous handicraft? Handicraft which is local handicraft. For example, in Assam, you know the jute industry, which is an indigenous handicraft, because bamboo is a great production there. So the people make various products out of bamboo and jute, and which is of a very good quality and which gets exported also. It's in high demand. So these cottage industries really flourish, and if you see the big cities also, they have little outlets to sell the products from these cottage industries, which are really very expensive, these products, and they're very beautiful because they carry the artifact from the villages. To bring about the maximum possible increase in the agricultural production. So the long-term objectives of community development programs is to complete planned development of all physical and human resources, to provide all villagers with full employment. So this was the aim of this community development program, to provide all villagers with full employment. No villager should remain unemployed, because of which the poverty comes, and poverty is a great way of concern, issue of concern for the policy makers who really want to alleviate the poverty. The goal of community development project is the development of villages in such a way that the citizens of the country may not lack anything. That means they are provided almost everything which is needed to live a comfortable, sustainable life. All should get adequate, nutritious food, and everyone should progress socially, morally, and financially. So all these things are very, very important. There should be progress in social structure of the village community, where there are no discriminations, no differences, people are living together in good harmony. That is a social progress. Moral progress meaning people are morally strong. They practice high moral values. They are selfless. They look after others. So, and they don't live for personal gains. They live for society gains, and they live for very high moral values. And then financial progress. So the employment is being targeted. So they will be progressing financially also. After CDP comes Integrated Rural Development Program, IRDP. Very, very important initiative by the government. So the IRDP is a program for improving the living standards of the poorest of the poor. It basically aimed at whom? The poorest of the poor, because generally all these programs that we are studying, they are aiming at the rural development only. So all of them are doing almost the same kind of things, and same areas are being targeted. There are many programs which are being run. So but this particular program IRDP is targeting to improve the living standards of the poorest of the poor living in the rural areas and making the process of rural development self-sustaining. So they should be able to sustain their life. So some poor people are so poor that they die of hunger. Many people in India, they die of hunger because they don't have food to eat 2 times a day or even 1 time a day, but properly. So what happens? They become malnourished and they die. So this IRDP programs target at those people to provide them food, and that also nutritious food as against some kind of employment. A large number of rural development programs have been introduced in different states, often creating confusion, problems of administration and effective implementation. So this is what we just discussed with you, that these many rural development programs are being run in the state. So this sometimes produce some kind of confusion and problems of administration. So now the government thinks that there should be one proper program which can target at the same areas. So that's why this Integrated Rural Development Program started. So this is an integration of all the rural development programs which are running in the villages. So this particular program takes over all those little programs that are being running. Hence, the Government of India decided to replace all these programs by a single integrated program for the entire country. It is in this background that IRDP was launched in 1978 and 79. It was a major attempt to attack poverty. So poverty was a major issue that this particular program was looking at. The major objective of these particular program is to enable selected families to cross the poverty line through a strategy of productive assets and endowment. So poverty line is what? Poverty line was decided by the Government of India, that if the people are not earning that much, they are under the poverty line. There is some criteria set, that if they, for example, do not earn more than 1 lakh rupees a year, that means they come under the poverty line. So by deciding like that, all those families that come under this poverty line, they will be benefited. How? Through a strategy of productive assets and endowment. So some assets will be provided to these people which will be productive. That means they can produce something out of those assets, out of those properties, and can earn a living. IRDP, TRISEM, Million Well Scheme, etc. So these were the names of various schemes that are there. They were relaunched in the name of Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana SGSY on 1st April 1999. So all these were again clubbed and made into one particular Yojana now. So which is again a mixture of all these. So IRDP is also now included in this. So what is this? Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarozgar Yojana SGSY on 1st April 1999. Aiming at providing self-employment to villages through the establishment of self-help groups SHGs. Then came Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. This is a very important act. It came in 2005 to enhance livelihood security of rural people by a guarantee of 100 days of wage employment. That is under this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It's an act, it's a law which says that government has to provide 100 days of wage employment to the rural poor. Wages will be given at least for 100 days to the rural poor, and the work should be provided within 5 kilometers of village at minimum wage rate. So a minimum wage rate was decided. It is all over India, it is different, 150 rupees or 120 rupees, somewhere 350. Like that it was decided, and it was guaranteed to the villagers that they will be gaining this particular employment at least for 100 days. This was the guarantee from the government, basically to alleviate people from the rural poverty. Government to provide work as stipulated days, failing which government has to pay unemployment allowance within 15 days. If the government fails to provide this kind of employment for 100 days or within 5 kilometers of area, or not at the wage fixed, then the government will have to provide at the unemployment allowance. That is, government has to just give free money in the name of unemployment allowance within 15 days. So failing 100 days tenure, the government has to give the sum money to the people who are still unemployed within the 15 days. MGNREA is to be implemented mainly by the Gram Panchayats. It guarantees generating productive assets, protecting the environment, empowering rural women. So all these people will be now participating in these kind of programs. Reducing rural-urban migration and fostering social equity or social equality. So it will be reducing rural-urban migration, which is a major problem that India is facing today. There is a lot of pressure on cities because people are traveling or migrating from towns, from villages to the towns. Why? Because there is not enough employment in the villages. So they are dying with poverty, or they are living a very poor life. So they move to various cities and they work at minimum wage level. They become laborers, they become taxi drivers, they become house maids, like that, drivers. So this is how the migration was taking place. Now to curb this kind of migration, the government of India has provided this kind of rural employment so that they don't have to run away from the rural areas in the search of employment. All government permissible works like water conservation, water harvesting, drought proofing, afforestation. Afforestation is the opposite of deforestation, meaning cutting off trees, minimizing the trees. What happens when that happens? It has a lot of pressure on the environment. It pollutes the environment completely whenever we cut trees. So the government is now very strict on cutting the trees. If one has to cut the trees for some reasons, they have to replant the trees also. So there is a particular department only which is looking after afforestation, which will obviously look after the needs of the people in the villages, because they are basically dependent on the trees only, on the agriculture only. Drought proofing is also that there are certain mechanisms for which rainwater harvesting can be brought into the picture, or irrigation facilities can be provided throughout the year, which will proof them from drought, which will save them from drought. Irrigation works, restoration of traditional water bodies. So if there were traditional water bodies, for example, old wells, etc. in the village, they will be restored. Land development, flood control, rural connectivity and works notified by the government are now included. Changes in the Indian villages. So what are the changes in the Indian village? So A.R. Desai has identified the major trends of social changes in the Indian village, which are as follows: farm to non-farm, migration from villages to cities, and special economic zone. So up till now, what did we study? We studied about the various programs and policies that were introduced by the government to improve or bring development in the Indian villages. Up till now we studied that. Now it is this other part where all the changes that have come in, they will be studied by the sociologists, that whether these programs have brought in any changes, or do we need to introduce some more changes for the village people. For this purpose, these studies are undertaken. So A.R. Desai, a pioneer of Indian sociology, he studied Indian villages and their social changes in them. So he talked about these 3 points. So let's take them up one by one. Farm to non-farm. Here under this you have a transformation from subsistence to market economy, transformation followed by introduction of modern technology, transformation by abolition of intermediaries, emergence of various associations and institutions. So let's take up one by one. Transformation from subsistence to market economy. As we have already discussed this, that because of the advent of modern technology, there has been a complete transformation from subsistence to market economy. Earlier the farmer was producing for himself, for sustenance of his own family. Now the farmer is producing for whom? To sell it in the market in a big way. It has become a market economy, like industry. The rapid transformation of the agrarian society from subsistence to a market-based, profit-oriented and commercialized agriculture. The rise of markets assisted by the extension of railways and roads, expansion of foreign trade of agricultural commodities transformed the whole old self-sufficient economy of the village based on barter into a market economy based on cash. So all these changes in the Indian society, in the Indian villages, what did they do? The rise of markets assisted by extension of railways and roads. So now railways and roads, with their coming, the distances are reduced. So now they can produce their crops, grains, and these production units or these production things can be transported to the other areas. So the expansion of foreign trade of agricultural commodities transformed the old self-sufficient economy. So how was the economy of the village before? It was self-sufficient. That is, whatever they produced for themselves, and they did not have to depend on the outside villages or outside cities. Everything that they needed was produced within their own system. That was called self-sufficient economy, which was based on barter. So I'm sure you know about the barter, where things were exchanged for things. Now came into the market economy, which was now based on cash. So the cash is exchanged as against things. Second is transformation followed by introduction of modern technology. So introduction of new technologies in the agriculture helped the peasants to attain greater levels of self-sufficiency. So new technology, with the coming of new technology, the farmer became more self-sufficient, which helped in improved plowing materials, hybrid seeds, chemicals and fertilizers, tractors, tillers, trucks, threshers, spraying machines, and other modern equipments. These were introduced to the agrarian society as a result of this technology. The Green Revolution and White Revolution added to the radical increase in the output. Green Revolution we have already discussed. What was White Revolution? White Revolution is the revolution of dairy products, the milk. And which is the hub of that? Anand in Gujarat. And the father of this White Revolution in India? Mr. Kurian, who brought this particular technology where the milk production increased so much in Gujarat that it turned into a white revolution, and the Gujarat farmers became merchant of milk, and the economy of Gujarat really stood up so high in a very short span of time because of this white revolution. So India attained self-sufficiency in food production and dairy products with these two revolutions, Green Revolution and White Revolution. C is transformation by abolition of intermediaries. So what are these? This particular transformation of abolishing the intermediaries such as zamindars, it actually protected the tenants and the laborers from the exploitation being done by the zamindars, and also it brought about the political enfranchisement of the vast population under adult suffrage, all widened the horizon of economic standards in the village. So the vast population of the village and all the adults, they all came under this political change that came about in the villages. And who were protected? The tenants and the laborers, and independence came with the view of new promise and hope, which really accelerated the economic and social reform measures. So with the abolition of intermediaries, many changes came, and which really and directly resulted the people who were poor, the people who were tenants, the people who did not own land. So all these things, the transformation and abolition of intermediaries helped those people and created better employment opportunities also. So there was some change. This was the third change we discussed. Fourth change was emergence of various associations and institutions in the villages. So there emerged a complex network of various associations and institutions within the agrarian societies. So these complex network of association and institutions, they had close links with urban and wide network influence. So how good it can be, you can understand that if there is a small, for example, take one little dispensary or health center in the village. Now it is no more a very little health center in the village. They may not be having enough facilities, but they have their linkage outside in the towns, in the cities. So in the case of emergency, the cases can be transferred there on a very fast pace. So the modern technology or the advancement in the cities is now filtering down to the villages through these close links. And here are some other examples of cooperative societies, political parties, peasants associations, youth organizations, educational institutions and Panchayati Raj institutions. These induced social changes. Then governmental agencies also encouraged the growth of new social organization in the village. Migration from villages to cities. One consequence of these disparities is the growing migration from core areas to richer ones. For example, laborers have gone from villages of Odisha and coffee plantations in the Coorg district of Karnataka. Many of the wheat fields in Punjab and Haryana are being harvested by laborers from Bihar and Jharkhand, and also there is a great deal of migration into the cities. Many plumbers in Delhi, for example, come from Odisha. Many taxi drivers in Mumbai are from Uttar Pradesh. Doctors and engineers are also increasingly seeking work elsewhere from their hometowns. So basically, what is happening here is, other than the agriculture, these laborers or these people from the village, they are working as the laborers in the cities. for a better life. So migration is still taking place. Here comes the special economic zone, which is the third change which has come in the Indian village. So first change was form to non-form. Under that came these 4 points: transformation from subsistence to market economy, transformation followed by introduction of modern technology, transformation by abolition of intermediaries, emergence of association and institutions. These were the 4 points under that first point, form to non-form. First change in the Indian village as being studied by A.R. Desai. The second change that he studied was migration from villages to cities. That was the second change, and we just discussed that. Now the third change that he is studying is SEZ, which is Special Economic Zone. It is defined as an earmarked geographical area meant for production of goods and services, basically meant for the purpose of export, where economic laws are different from prevailing ones in the other parts of the country. So special facilities are provided to the firms operating in SEZ in terms of tax concessions, infrastructural setups, as well as regulatory incentives. SEZs can be set up in the public sector, private sector, or joint sector, or even by the state government in collaboration with any corporate. Now, what are the limitations of SEZ? Under the proposals of setting up of SEZs in the agro sector to boost the exports of goods and agro products which are supposed to benefit the farmers of the country, the land is acquired at a subsidized rate, and the compensation given to the landowner is far less than the market price. So what is happening in the name of this SEZ, Special Economic Zone? Certain areas are earmarked basically as geographical areas. It is meant for production of goods and services. So what kind of goods and services which will be given for export? So their economic laws will be different from the other of the rest part of the country. So what are they doing? They are grabbing the land from the poor farmers at a very cheap price, not at a market price. It also gives rise to income disparities and has helped the rich to become richer. These special economic zones are exploiting labor and displacing livelihoods in the agrarian economy. So it started with a good note, the special economic zone, but it ended up in more exploitation of the poor farmer. How? By taking their land forcibly, or by giving them very less wages for the labor that is being taken by them for these export agencies. They are agro-based export agencies, but they are export agencies. They are meant to create production to be sent or to be sold in the other countries. The agrarian policy of the Government of India and the state governments are against the interests of the vulnerable sections. So the policies that came into picture under this special economic zone, it somehow turned out to be against the interest of the vulnerable sections. That means the weaker sections who are more prone to these kind of exploitation. So these agrarian policies also against them of SEZ. The reality is that under the Special Economic Zone policy, state governments are acquiring lands under the Land Acquisition Act for industries and corporate agencies. So they are acquiring the land from the farmer at a very cheap price, and where they are using it for industries and corporate agencies, not for upliftment of the rural people. Thus the marginal and small farmers are rendered landless. So what are the marginal and small farmers? Those who are working at very small area of the land, and they are not profit makers. They are just living in very substantial way, a very subsistence way of living. There is a strong resistance by farmers and agricultural laborers throughout the country, but yet the land is being acquired forcefully. Some farmers have lost their lives in this process. So something that started to do good to the farmers actually is ending up harming them. So these are the basic problems with the government system where corruption or exploitation somehow creeps in. So this is the end of this chapter. This is a long chapter we have taken. So I would just like to give you a little summary of what we just did so that you don't feel lost in this. Basically today we addressed the issues of the farmer with the help of rural development programs. And under rural development programs we talked about first the meaning of rural development, and then we talked about various programs. First we divided them into production oriented programs and non-production oriented programs. Then we talked about major rural development programs. So major rural development programs were land reforms, green revolution, Panchayat Raj, community development programs, that is CDP, and integrated rural development program, IRDP. Then you have Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, NGNREGA, which basically provides the guarantee for employment for the rural poor people. After that, after discussing all these programs of rural development, we discussed the changes that have come about in Indian society, in Indian villages by A.R. Desai. Under that we studied form to non-form. Under that were 4 points. Then we studied migration from village to cities, and then we studied the special economic zone and its limitation. So this is the second last part of your chapter. After that we'll study about the urbanization in India, which will be done in the next part. Here are the questions for this part. Which amendment in the constitution has given more power to Panchayati Raj? Expand IRDP, MGNREGA and SEZ. Mention any one change in Indian villages according to A.R. Desai. So only one you have to discuss. Define Panchayat Raj and explain the function of village Panchayat. So you have to explain their functions and just explain them very briefly. Explain briefly IRDP. So these are your 5 questions. Please go through your chapter, and it should not be a difficult one, although it is a lengthy one. It should not be difficult if you know the basic theme of the chapter and how we are moving, if you know the structure of the chapter. So with that we end this part. Thank you and Om Sai Ram.